From action star to villainous big boss to comic sidekick, there was almost nothing this guy couldn't do. But his sudden and shocking death left lingering questions that are still, no doubt, haunting Hollywood. Michael Clarke Duncan was a towering presence, physically and talent-wise. His sudden death at the age of just 54 rocked Hollywood and much of the world. A man known for his rigorously healthy lifestyle who nevertheless died suspiciously young. It led to lots of speculation. Steroids, something more recreational, an undiagnosed heart condition perhaps, or just good old-fashioned foul play. What is known is that on the early morning hours of July 13, 2012, he would be rushed to an emergency room for a cardiac event from which he would never recover. He died 2 months later at Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles. During that time, his family would learn from his girlfriend that he was now engaged to her. And not just any her, but Omarosa O'Neill Manigault Newman, hereafter referred to simply as Omarosa for the sake of sanity. Yes, the grande dame of reality TV duplicity, who parlayed those tactics all the way to the White House. Yes, she'd clawed and connived and backstabbed her way to a reputation perhaps unparalleled in its unpleasantness. From secretly taping her White House colleagues, even in the Situation Room, to penning a how-to manual on emotionally manipulating people. And here this person stood, the family recounts, announcing their engagement and offering as proof her engagement ring. Or at least a photograph of it. So what happened in that house they shared? The one tucked away up in Woodland Hills. The one the closest members of his family weren't allowed to stay in during his hospitalization, despite its 7 bedrooms. And why didn't his family and his best friends seem to know anything about this engagement? And what's this business with the will? Changing it just weeks ahead of his fatal heart attack to largely disinherit his own family and leave most everything to guess who? And you know, it sure wasn't just family and friends giving her the side eyes, but Hollywood colleagues, asking questions, even making accusations. And of course, even more eyebrows were raised over the funeral arranged for him, and not by his family back home. A red carpet affair laden with cameras and sometimes seemingly focused on someone other than Michael Clarke Duncan. Surprisingly, there just didn't seem to be a lot of big investigations surrounding the death of this internationally known personality. 7 years later, the UK series Autopsy with Dr. Michael Hunter investigated Duncan's cause of death in 2019, and they determined that no evidence had been unearthed supporting steroid use, drug abuse, or poisoning. Of course, as no actual autopsy was conducted in this case, forensically, they also found no evidence of Bigfoot. Even for a big guy, LA can be a scary place, one fraught with temptation and treachery. But Big Duncan, as many of his family called him, always seemed to cut above the fray in this city of lost angels, always focused on his health and fixated on his future. So how then, so many were asking, did it all go so terribly wrong? So it was at a holiday gathering about 8 months before his passing that his family started to suspect something might be wrong. Big Duncan, a normally avuncular family man and avid animal lover, kept excusing himself from the festivities for a series of naps. This was surprising to his family, as this was the first time they'd been together in quite some time. It was also the first time his family would be meeting his new girlfriend, Omarosa. They'd met not at the latest Hollywood premiere, nor backstage at one of the many award shows he was known to frequent, but instead at his corner grocery. But try as they might to enjoy their holiday, to the family, something seemed off.
Michael wasn't in the living room when we opened up gifts. I was like, see, I know something's not right, something's not right.
And that something's not right would reverberate through the months ahead. Something's not right, they thought, about this engagement ring picture, about the timing of the will. Something's just not right, they thought, about all of it. But life moved on. The family headed back home to Chicago as Michael returned to work on his new Fox series. And it was just 4 months after that bizarre holiday where he was observed slurring his words, having difficulty with his balance, and routinely experiencing serious fatigue, according to his family, that suddenly he felt compelled to change his will.
Michael effectively left the majority of his estate to girlfriend Omarosa, a fact which his friends and family found difficult to understand.
Why he changed his will, I have no idea. When I found out that everything in that home was going to Omarosa, I couldn't believe that.
Well, believe it. And not just shifting the beneficiary away from his own bloodline, but oddly stipulating in the will's language, it's reported, that should any of them challenge the will, they'd be cut out of it entirely. Though not unheard of in estate planning, such a choice seemed uncharacteristic of Big Duncan, and is a tool often used to silence an ex-wife or a troublemaking black sheep. It's not a clause one typically applies to one's own mother. And some question the uniqueness of shifting such legal and financial responsibility to a would-be spouse months ahead of the supposed nuptials, when they were technically still strangers in the eyes of the state. I mean, not only were multiple people challenging openly the idea that they were engaged at all, some were saying the photograph she showed of the engagement ring at the hospital did not match the one she had on at the funeral. Additionally, family and friends, including one close former friend to Omarosa herself, claimed she was fixated on Duncan's money and estate, even at the hospital. The family says personal items they'd requested, like his director's chair from the Green Mile and some bottles of cologne his young nephew wanted as a keepsake, were instead sold at auction without their knowledge. And their request for some assistance with Duncan's mother, suffering from Alzheimer's, was ignored. Meanwhile, Omarosa claimed that she was being bombarded by long-lost relatives coming out of the woodwork, asking for this and that. Out of the woodwork, like his mother and his only sibling. At every turn, the family says they were either rebuffed or insulted or ignored, including asking why his grave remained unmarked for nearly a year. I know, it seems cartoonishly bad and even radioactively suspicious. But how do you apply those norms to someone who seems to have intentionally cultivated a public persona of being dastardly bad and broadly disliked, both then and now?
I want to talk about the former White House aide, Omarosa Manigault New.
It's Black History Month. We got to talk about Omarosa. All right.
Every critic, every detractor will have to bow down to President Trump.
So she said she has a story to tell, and I'm sure she'll be selling that story.
Okay, Carter G. Woodson did not go to the mat to get Negro History Week that eventually turned into Black History Month for us to talk about Omarosa on her apology tour and her attempt to salvage her reputation on a reality television show. Not during Black History Month, guys.
Bye, Felicia.
It's everyone who's ever doubted Donald, whoever disagreed, whoever challenged him. It is the ultimate revenge. In a blink of an eye, your life can change. He went to bed a little earlier than me, and at some point, later that evening, I could hear him laboring, trying to breathe, and then I didn't hear anything. And I just jumped up. And when I realized he wasn't breathing, I just started doing CPR and trying to get 911 online, and I just started praying. I mean, I prayed like I have never prayed before.
Reportedly, the family made an effort to get those 911 calls released. They were denied. But there are accounts that Omarosa's actions that night stopped him from dying on the spot.
We were able to get his heart started again and breathing again, and we got him to the best hospital, and he fought. After 2 months of fighting, he passed away.
Stunned and devastated. That's how some Hollywood heavyweights say they're feeling after the death of actor Michael Clarke Duncan.
The doctors had considered taking him off life support. I just kept thinking, no, it's got to change. So at some point, I just had to realize, all right, this is what's going to happen.
But before a decision can be made about his care, Michael dies from respiratory failure on September 3rd, 2012, alone in his hospital room.
And just a handful of weeks later, Omarosa would begin taping another season of Celebrity Apprentice. And it'd be a doozy of a season if you're into that sort of thing, where wide-ranging allegations about Duncan's final days and beyond were front and center. There are many ghosts still haunting Hollywood, flickering like faded film, almost dancing alongside the evening searchlights, beckoning to be heard. Some cry out for lost loves, some perhaps still chasing that old familiar spotlight. But the ones lingering longest are usually those cases where a major talent was lost early, suddenly, unjustly. Michael Clarke Duncan was just such a case. His family contends he was robbed of a full investigation and forgotten too fast by too many.
I would sense that he was trusting people that perhaps he shouldn't.
His family has remained cryptically coy about their suspicions, while others, not so much.
Omarosa's fiance passed away not long ago. He had a heart attack. I'm sure she gave it to him.
Oh my God, I'm being punked by a Jackson!
Officially, the cause of Michael Clarke Duncan's death was complications from his heart attack. His will was above board and valid, and at least according to the California Bible, otherwise known as TMZ, he was indeed engaged to Omarosa.